Hello and welcome to the Dao of Humaning. I'm Dr. Christine. I'm going to be your host and facilitator as we explore this new space to have discussions around the wonderful, sometimes messy, amazing, miraculous world of being humans that we get to be in together. I'm really glad that you're here. I am wanting to kick off this space by sharing a little bit about how the space came to be. It has been in the background as a whisper for a number of years, to be honest. And, sometimes these things line up in a way that it just becomes time. So welcome to the time that is now. I have had a really interesting life, and I was actually preparing for a speaking event recently, and I was working on the aspects of, what it is that I do. It became evident by the group of women that I was with that there are some interesting perspectives that I have gleaned over the years. I have been blessed with some really incredible, beyond amazing teachers, both in my spiritual studies as well as my studies in Chinese medicine. So we'll get into all these aspects a little bit more, but I wanted to highlight some of the bigger picture aspects of, what you can expect when we're hanging out together and having a little bit of time to share and to think about what does it really mean to be humaning, and what does that mean to have an exploration of the Dao of Humaning. So we're going to be discussing these aspects today. One of the biggest, tenets of this space that I want to be introducing is this idea of approaching life with a non-problematic orientation, we call it. So what does that mean? That means we're looking at life through the lens of how can things be useful for us, and really having that philosophy underneath it all that what shows up for us in our lives is valuable and useful and perhaps even a gift. I do firmly, deeply believe that we are meant to come into this world and to bump up against things and to see, what it is that we enjoy, who it is that we love being around, how we like showing up, how we don't like showing up for life. And I don't think that the messy parts are bad or need to be pushed away. I think, there are ways to work with what shows up for us in our lives in a way that can be really fulfilling. And so when people ask me, like, okay, what do you do? Sometimes I get a little bit tripped up and I'm like, well, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine and I do acupuncture and I have a clinic and a wellness space and I also teach research classes and I also teach Qigong classes and have this like deep spiritual aspect to me and like all of this work that I do, and then it ends up being like, oh, okay, where does all of that fit together? And I feel this space is really going to be so incredible to be able to have somewhere that all of these aspects can play together. And I think if we look at keeping on the theme of like, those questions at like networking groups, right? Like, what do you do? Right? People ask me, what do you do? Like, yes, I can help your shoulder pain, or I can help your cycles be more regular, help you, with your fertility and those kinds of things. And also, underneath that is this layer of, I want you to live your most excellent life. And I want you to be able to be energetic and vibrant and, showing up open and loving for the people around you. And, just to be living this life that's so wildly nourishing, I think I would say. Wildly nourishing. um, Yeah. So this is a space where we're going to be looking at humaning, is the word that I have chosen to kind of encompass this idea of life as a verb. And it's something that we are actively participating in. And we get to show up every day how we choose to, right? Aside from all of the things that are going on in and around us. This is a space to look at the complexity of being human. And so for me, that looks like, our physical selves. So our physical bodies, our physiology. It looks like our energetic and emotional selves. It looks like mental health. It looks like our spiritual connection, the deeper meaning and questions in life. And this is a space where we can remember that we are not doing this alone, that we're doing this together. So some of the topics that we'll address will be, sometimes we'll talk about hormonal health or, different physiological functions, and I might bring in different research pieces when that's useful. And also, I may bring in some of the more subtle energetics and intuitive, kind of more wisdom medicine side of things. And to me, those things are not, there's not really a need for those to be separate. And so part of the reason why I wanted to create this space for us is because I think we need more spaces where there's space for grace, as I say, making space for grace in life. I feel like there's a lot of, whether it's out loud or implied, there's a lot of pressure nowadays to pick a side. Like you have to be science, or you have to be, totally not science, or you have to pick a lane and commit to all of the things that go on in that lane, whether you agree with all of them or not. But it's like, okay, well, a lot of us are not, a lot of life is not that black and white. And so we're going to talk about the sensible, the spirituality, the day-to-day life. I also have an influence of mine is project management. And so I have a project management professional certification as well. And that influences also how I look at the world, right? So looking at how we can see goals and looking at, what are the aspects that are supportive of those goals in our life at the moment and what aspects are not supportive, and how can we shuffle things around so that we can reach our goals with more ease and more grace. So we'll be talking about some of those aspects of humaning as well. So very practical and useful is how my work tends to be interpreted. So I hope that is the same for you. Very much embracing of imperfection is perfection, and, embracing the mess of life as nourishment and amazing. And what a gift some of these things are. I already have all of these different ideas and topics that I want to talk about. And honestly, coming up with the first episode was challenging because I was like, well, I want to share everything all at once. But perhaps we will take our time a little more. And see kind of how things unfold and how, what is landing as useful I would love to hear. So if you want to put in the comments or reach out and share what's resonating for you, what questions you have, I really enjoy that interaction as well. Yeah, and so this idea of humaning, so us showing up as an active participant in our lives, and then the Dao. So if you're not familiar, Dao, gosh, we'll discuss more of this, but in a very bird's eye level, the Dao means the way. And you could spell Dao with a D or a T. It means the same thing. It's translated as the way. And so there's an imagery sometimes of a path. And so there's also often an imagery of like a walking on a path. So how, in my mind, creating this was, how are we walking this path of humaning in our own individual lives, right? Because ultimately we are only responsible for our own, we're only in control of our own things. But also, how are we doing this together? And how are we doing this in relationship with the people in our lives and the bigger world? And how do we do that when we're not sleeping well, or we're not digesting well, or our hormones are going wonkadoo? There's those very like physical, energetic, emotional, spiritual aspects to this path, right? And what is it that inspires us and gets us really lit up and excited, right? It's going to be very different from what lights me up to what lights you up, right? And so I want to have conversations around that, and how do we keep more of that in our day-to-day lives so that we end up moving towards this experience in life where more and more and more of it feels inspired and miraculous and profound, right? Like I'm very much, I find a lot of value in ritual in like real life, I guess I would say, ritual in real life. So how do you make the day-to-day, Thursday afternoon car pickup line, how do you make that into something that feels nourishing and inspiring to you? And maybe that involves scrolling on Instagram. Great. Be intentional about that, right? And maybe it involves like putting on your music that you love, or creating something. These are all things that I want to spend more time on. So that's part of what we're going to be doing here. There is very much, I would say I'm a non-fundamentalist in that I really believe we each need to find our own way, so our own Tao. And there are, kind of universal principles that I'll be sharing from my training and different philosophies and things that I've studied that might be very interesting to you. Yeah, so it's not about, following a certain set of things. It's about finding what is going to light you up, and to do more of those things, and to keep this aspect of exploring and discovering, I wonder what else could light me up, and I wonder what else could be inspiring to me that I haven't even thought of yet. Those are the kinds of questions that I want to be focused around here. Also learning about our own physiological rhythms. So I work a lot in clinic with women's health, and the cyclical nature of the menstrual cycle and the moon cycles, and how I'll be sharing some ideas around how we can utilize that energy to have more ease in our lives, because there are ways when we line ourselves up with the natural rhythms of our physiology or the natural world around us. So seasonal living, there are certain things that are more like resources that are easier to tap into. So for instance, in the wintertime, leaning into rest is really powerful because it's the energy of water. And it's really supportive of the kidneys and rejuvenation and wisdom and, all of these things that are useful tools. So I'll be sharing some of the tools that I have and some of the perspectives that I have. And ultimately, I think of the space as an invitation. The invitation for all of that, for us together, is to reconnect and to reconnect with that inner wisdom, and that to come from a really grounded inner space first, and then show up in the world around us and have our interactions and our loved ones and things, our work in the world, for example. But having that inner knowing first, what I see so much of in clinic and my patients and my students is, yesterday I was talking to someone about how there's sometimes too many inputs, right? Whether it's social media or family or friends, well-meaning loved ones in our lives having inputs and ideas around things, or just the sheer amount of information that's available to us nowadays, which is amazing. And also, how do you develop the discernment to be able to see what's really resonating and aligning with your personal life, right? A lot of times, like, I'll see women come in for hormonal health, and they'll be taking a list of, 15 different supplements, and they're all wonderful. And some of them may not match her particular pattern that's showing up in her body. And sometimes you're overloading the system by giving it too much information. Sometimes simpler is better. So we're going to explore some of those ideas as well. How do you listen to your own rhythms? How do you listen to the rhythms of nature around you and the seasons? How do we kind of lessen the inputs so that we can actually listen and hear on the inside what's going to be most valuable for us in that moment? In terms of what you can expect coming and hanging out, we're going to be having some real life conversations about things. We're going to be maybe getting a little bit nerdy about some things, maybe some sassy conversations around certain topics. I hope that this is a fun and enjoyable space of learning and inspiration. It sounds amazing to me. Yeah, but looking at, like, how is our body, how are our emotions, how is our nervous system, how is our energy throughout the day in different seasons of change in our lives, and having that overarching understanding that our body is wise and that our bodies are communicating with us, and understanding what sometimes those messages are saying, can save us a lot of time and energy. Because ultimately, I want us all to be able to have more time and energy to be doing the things that we love in life, because we get one life that we know of. And there's there's so much miraculousness to this life, and even the mess, even the things that are uncomfortable and hard, can also be really amazing, and not in a bypassing kind of a way. We'll talk about this for another episode. We'll get into that a little bit. I do believe that, true joy is an inside job. I think that is something inherent in ourselves, and that is something that can't be taken away by outside circumstances. We'll get into more of that and what that means, and how we might explore that a little bit in our lives. And remembering that our way of humaning is our way. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. If something that was spoken today resonated with you, take it in, let it settle, and see what shifts. And if this feels like a space that you'd like to return to, be sure to follow along so you'll get notified when new episodes are released. And until then, keep turning inward, listening to yourself. That's where the way always begins.